I'm Lou Brutus. My next guest comes to us from the bustling metropolis of Pittsburgh, Texas, and I'm very happy to welcome Koe Wetzel. Koe, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Now, listen, I grew up in New Jersey originally. So when I was first learning about music, it came as quite a shock that there wasn't just Texas music, that Texas music is actually about 15 to 20 different genres of music based on interest and geography. If you would, can you break it down a little bit without getting too deep in the sagebrush, the differences between Texas Panhandle, Texarkana area where you're from, El Paso, Austin, which is its own animal. Can you kind of tell me about all these things?
Yeah, man. You got your West Texas. It's more cowboy country, a little more honky tonk. You got your steel players, your fiddles, and just more bar music, really. You got your hill country music, your Austin vibe, which is, your Randy Rogers, your Wade Bowen, stuff like that, man. Um, East Texas is mainly rock and rollers, dude. We us Whiskey Myers, guys like that, man. We love rock music. So people in Dallas, they just kind of play whatever. So down south, you have more of the Tejano Mexican kind of country vibe going on, and I don't know, man. It's kind of just wherever you grow up, or just kind of all over the place in Texas, man. Texas is so big. There's so many genres.
Yeah, and I would have to think that, being from down there originally, that you came into contact with a whole lot of different stuff, which probably explains your multi-genre interest now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Growing up, I was a big fan of, just Texas country, like I said, so many genres. And then you got Oklahoma right above us that had the red dirt genre. And that was more, rock and roll as well with Cody Canada, Son of LaRue, guys like that, Mike McClure. So, you know, in high school and middle school, going to concerts, that was more of my style. That's what I would go listen to. And that's kind of how I fell in love with the style of music that we play.
What kind of bands were you getting access to in those years, middle school and high school? Like, how far did you have to go for a good concert?
Uh, Tyler, which was about an hour and a half away. We go there, man. There was a small bar in my hometown. I grew up in a town of 3,500 people, and there was this bar outside of town called I think it was Cowboy Jim's, and it was a dive bar, dude. It was a little shithole, but they would bring in these artists and sell them out at 1,000 capacity when it probably only held 500 people, and it would just get hectic, man. So we would sneak in there, in middle school. We'd find a way to sneak in, or we'd just pull up outside and try and listen to as much as we could. So,
And who are some of these artists that you were seeing back there yourself?
same stuff, man. We had like JB and the Moonshine Band, Randy Rogers, Wade Bowen, Stoney. I think Chris Young was there one time. I don't know. There was a bunch of different artists. We had a bunch of mainstream guys from country come in as well too. But we played it once we first started going, and then the next week I think it burnt down. So they said it was electrical fire, but who knows?
Yeah, I saw I saw things about fires like that in the film Goodfellas, I think was the way
Yeah,
it went.
like
So how do
election.
you end up? How do you end up? You're young and you start going to shows. How do you get sucked into this whole thing yourself?
Oh man, it's just kind of been a family deal. Honestly, my mom, she played. So I grew up around, in old Opry houses with old honky tonk bands and shit like that. So I'd always be around music. And my cousins went to school in Texas State, which is where Randy and those guys, it was kind of a big music hub for Texas country. And they'd come back home and tell me all these crazy stories about it. And then just kind of, kickstart my interest in writing songs. I always played music, played small shows and venues around Pittsburgh and, with my mom and stuff. And then I got into songwriting and got to college and knew I wasn't going to make it to the NFL. So I was like, hell, man, might as well get some free beer and some pretty girls to kiss on at the end of the night, instead of getting my ass kicked in football every day. So said to hell with it and took a chance.
Quick aside from music, since you brought it up, can you explain to folks from other parts of the country the importance of high school football to the identity of every small town or city through the state of Texas?
Yeah, it's biblical, man. It's die hard. Like football is life. As soon as if you're a dude in Texas, you're growing up playing football. You know, it's Pop Warner, the Pee Wee, all the way up, man. It's kind of like the movie Varsity Blues. It's almost identical to that. You know, it's God in Texas.
And there's some Texas teams, high school teams, that are drawn like in the tens of thousands for home games.
Dude, it's crazy. Like Allen and schools like that, they're spending, millions and millions of dollars on these stadiums, and the capacity is like 30,000 or something. You know, they're bigger than some colleges. You know, it's ridiculous, man.
You ever on the road on a day off and you see the lights off in the distance and think, man, let's go see a game?
All the time, man. All the time. I still got a bunch of buddies that coach. I've got family that coaches and stuff. So anytime we're off on a Friday, if there's a game close, we usually try to sneak out there and I always try to go back to my hometown and catch a game, and get on the sidelines and get that feeling, it gives you chills. So
You got to be a big deal because again, and it's not like I was making fun of it, but you know, you come from a real small town. You got
yeah.
to be a pretty big deal when you come back into town and see everybody.
Uh, yeah, I mean, ish. Yeah, kind of. There's still it depends on how you look at it, but they let me on the sideline, so that's pretty cool, I guess. Instead of throwing me in jail. So oh man, everybody's great back home. I love going back and everybody's really supportive, so it's cool.
Were you a good kid growing up?
I was, man. I was a good kid. I'm still a good kid, man. What are you talking about? I haven't played.
Now, let's get back into music a little bit more. Now, I would be curious when you first started to figure out songwriting. Do you remember what your first song was?
Uh, yeah, it was a song called 1111. But before that, I had wrote a song. My cousins were writing. I was probably in the seventh or eighth grade. My cousins were writing. They went outside to smoke a joint or smoke a cigarette, and they were like, "You can't come with us. You got to stay in here." So, I told them, I was like, "Man, I'm gonna write a song. By the time they get back, they're gonna be so proud of me, dude. I'm gonna be so awesome to them." And I started writing the song, and I think it was to the melody of "The Dance" by Garth Brooks, and the lyrics were almost identical to the lyrics of "The Dance" by Garth Brooks. And I showed it to my cousin, and I think he still has it to this day. I said, "Dude, if you don't frame that and give it to me, I mean, you're gonna fight." But yeah, it was terrible. It was horrible. But if I ever find it, I'll probably try to recut it and see what everybody thinks.
You're new, of course, to a lot of people in the rock world, but you've made a lot of really good records. I would just ask you to perhaps compare how you approached going in to make a record when you were still a bit wet behind the ears to now, because as good as your early records were, they're just simply not as accomplished as what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, growing up in Texas, it's you start off in the bar scene, and most music that comes from the bar scene is Texas country and red dirt music. So, man, that's just what we were making. I grew up listening to country music. I always wanted to play country music. Uh, but I think as we grew, throughout our career, it just we kind of started going back on the music that we came up on, which was, all the rock stuff, the Weezer, the Nirvanas, Smashing Pumpkins, all that stuff, all the rock, the punk rock, all the stuff like that. So I think as we, progressed, we fell more into it, and it wasn't that we were trying to, it's just kind of what happened, it was all just put together there. We weren't out to set out to make a rock record. It's what came out whenever we went into the studio, So I think it was just a accumulation of overtime and just everything coming together at one time.
And I think it's a generational thing because I notice as more and more musicians come up through the ranks, forget about what genre they're originally known for. It seems there are a lot of folks who are very much open to taking, you do a lot of with country and different sorts of rock. There's hip hop people who are throwing jazz in there now.
Uh,
Why do you think there's seems to be a new openness for folks to mix and match so much?
Well, I said the other day that I think it's just more or less our generation and what we kind of came up on. The music that we were listening to whenever we were elementary, middle school, high school. The all the rap music, all the rock music. Just stuff that other artists before us, probably weren't listening to. So I feel like it's just kind of came up with this generation of musician and artists, and it's impacted us to make the kind of music that we're making.
Now, I have to admit that when I first saw the title of the album, Hell Paso, I laughed my ass off. Was that original, or is that just a term people were using down in Texas for a long time that us dumbasses from New Jersey didn't know about?
Well, if you've ever been to El Paso, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. It's a great city, man. It's just you kind of you drive for so long in the desert, you see nothing, and you top this hill, and then you got Juarez on one side, and you got El Paso, and it's just like it's chaos. It's complete chaos. And so we're sitting in the studio, and we'd been out there for like a month, and we were all tired, and we had the record finished. We were all ready to get home, and I was like, let's get the hell out of hell, and we're like, hold up, it's called the Hell Paso, so it kind of wrote itself, man, named itself.
That, and it's, that title, it lent itself to the album art so well. Uh, Tell me a little bit about putting that together, because it's just, I don't know that I would call it nightmarish imagery, but it's
Yeah,
like, Pink
yeah,
Floyd on bad drugs down south.
yeah, for sure. So we were gonna take a helicopter and go just take a picture of the city, or go up to one of the peaks and take a picture of it in Juarez. And man, I wanted to have something that kind of, give it that eerie feeling. So we had the cross with the bandana that I usually wear, the rib cage with the buzzards circling, and the trailer house with the truck on fire in the background, and it uh it kind of came together and rounded off the record as a whole.
And the opening sequence, and by the way, I always love when a record opens with sort of a little introductory piece, and sometimes that can be spoken word like with you, other times it can be like a short sort of bizarre musical interlude. Was that just some, studio room floor stuff that got on the front? How did that come around? And by the way,
Yes.
it's welcome to El Paso for folks who haven't checked out the
Yeah,
beginning of the
yeah,
record.
welcome to Hell Paso. So my producer, he likes to keep the mics usually rolling, so we have a lot of B roll. And so we were in there, and we'd had a little bit way too much to drink. And I got up there, and I was like, oh shit, are we rolling right now? He was like, yeah. And I'd had the whatever it was, I'd had the idea for it, but I didn't know that we were rolling at the time. And it was probably 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just walked up there, and I did what I did. And the next morning he sent the clip to me, and I was like, shit, man, that's it. That's the introduction to the record, and it worked out right, man.
And it leads right into Creeps. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on why you think that tune is doing so well with so many different kinds of people, so many different sorts of music fans.
Well, I think it's got that riff, man. It's got the catchy riff. It's just a song that kind of just sticks in your head. You got the lyrics that are, they're pretty they're pretty raw and real. It's a lot of what people go through. So I don't know, man. It's a catchy song. My buddy Andrew Bayless and Whitworth, they sent me the chorus to it while we are in the studio, and I was like, holy shit. So I went in, I wrote the verses for it. We come out of it, we were like, man, we really dig this song. We didn't think that people would take to it as well as they did, but we're very glad that they did. And man, yeah, it's doing great for us, man.
And tell me about the guitar sounds for that tune, because it maybe you got lightning in a bottle right away, but it certainly sounds like something that you worked on to get it just right.
Yeah, dialed in. So we had Adrian Busby come down from London. He flew in. He did a bunch of stuff back in the day with Foo Fighters and Spice Girls and stuff like that. And we got him to come in and kind of help engineer and help with tones and everything. And the he's a fucking madman, dude. He's just insane. And he had got there a couple days before I showed up to the studio, and he had everything dialed to a T, man. We out there in Tornillo at Sonic Ranch, they have every vintage guitar amp, every guitar you can think of, and he had shit strewn out everywhere in the big room. I'm talking about plugs going in and out of stuff. I was like, "There's no way any of this is gonna work." He was like, "Trust me." And we hit that first lick, and I was like, "All right." You know what you're doing.
You answered my next question already, because I was going to ask if everything was vintage or if it was replicated by plugins. It's got to be a hell of a lot more fun when you get the vintage, old school museum piece stuff in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it takes a lot longer, especially when when you're in the studio and if you don't have a lot of time. But man, we had like a month and a half out there. So most of the days it would just be us. We would spend one day on, drum tones or you know, a guitar tone or whatever it was. We had a lot of time. So the recording process wasn't as, we didn't have as much time restraint on it as far as getting the right tones and what we wanted out of everything. So that was good to have that out there.
Well, Co, I appreciate the time. Quickly, if you would, though, tell me about this next tour. Who else is going to be out with you? Because again, you're so much fun to sort of mix and match with concert bills.
We've got Tyler Farr, we've got Dylan Wheeler, Kobe Cooper, Pecos and the Rooftops, the Cadillac Three, a couple other guys, man. I should wrote all this shit down, man. My memory's not as good as it used to be.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing you, and it sounds like a good way to spend the spring and summer. Is life everything that you wanted it to be at this point?
I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm very blessed, bro.
Well, I appreciate the time, Co. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Take care.